Welcome to Clicks and Bricks Podcast. We talk about the entrepreneur mindset.
If you get one shot at this, what kind of shot are you going to take?
If we forget who we are, they're going to forget who you are.
You've got an adversity story that's out of this world.
Everything from that Main Street brick and mortar to that billion-dollar manufacturer.
Welcome back to Clicks and Bricks. I'm here with David today with the Streamline Company. He's a founder, co-founder, and CEO of the company. David, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Ken. Thank you very much for having me today.
Thank you for joining us. We're really excited to jump in and figure out what's going on in the Streamlining Companies business today. I'm sure the industry is changing at breakneck speed. But before we jump into all of those details, David, can you tell us a little about who you are and what led you down this entrepreneurial path?
Absolutely. I can tell you exactly where that started. Growing up on the south side of Chicago, no father figure in my life, mother working long hours in downtown Chicago. I was raised by my 4'10" grandmother. She was tough as nails, and she taught me work ethic, loyalty, dedication, street smarts. Everything that she taught me, I bring to every relationship still today. So I thank the Lord for my grandmother in my life when I was growing up. I started in the real estate industry 29 years ago, coming up on 30 very quickly here. Started as a commercial broker in the western suburbs of Chicago, selling apartment buildings, retail centers, multi-tenant buildings to investors that wanted to diversify away from the stock market. Doing that for a couple of years, I then met a partner and we started to get into development and investing in our own portfolio. We started with one single family fix and flip, then we did two. And then we started building some homes and then buying apartment buildings. And over the 29-year career I've had, I've invested, bought, built, owned, and managed every class of real estate there is, except for mobile home and storage facilities. Now, we had a great run when I met my partner in 2001. Unfortunately, the Great Recession, 2008, 2009 came through, basically blew the company apart. We were into a townhome development for $4 million. Couldn't sell anything. People were losing their homes, losing their jobs. And who were we to try and sell something? A couple months later, my partner passes away. He has a heart attack and he's gone. So I'm left there by myself trying to figure this out. And I knew I wasn't going to give up. So I went to the community lender that I worked with exclusively for about 8 years at that point. I said, we need to figure something out together. Because at that time, banks were getting closed, TARP money was being thrown around, and he didn't want to participate in any of that. He was a fighter as well. So we renegotiated my loan to the point where I could finish out the project. And instead of selling these units, we made them into rentals. And we rented them for about another 5 or 6 years until the market turned around. And then I could start selling them and ultimately sold all the units for a profit. And I couldn't have done that without the help of a local lender, somebody that I can deal with directly. So after that point of my life, things were kind of crazy with no more partner, having just come out of this huge struggle. Getting close to my 49th birthday, I started to think about, all right, what's next in my life? Unfortunately, my 49th birthday, I was thrown off a horse in Puerto Vallarta, collapsed lung, 3 days in a Mexican hospital. And boy, if that's not a point in your life where you sit there and reflect and say, what the hell am I doing? I was told by the doctors not to fly for about 10 days after they released me because of the collapsed lung. Well, this was the middle of December now, and I wasn't going to miss Christmas back at home. So I got on that plane for the first time in my life I was ever afraid, held my wife's hand for the 2-hour ride back to Phoenix, got off the plane and said, I'm done. We're going to change our life. We're going to do things differently. I retired. My wife and I embarked on a series of vacations and traveling and exploring and reconnecting. She had just retired from the education system. So at that point of our lives, we had raised our kids. We had done everything we needed to. We had cash flow from our real estate investments. I didn't need to do anything more. So we started to enjoy and learn about each other again as a couple. But ultimately, around month 10 of that retirement, there was a calling within inside me. That calling was to get back to the game, not to just build our portfolio, but to teach and to help others. So at my 50th birthday party, I shook hands with a partner and we embarked on building the Streamline Companies. Based on all my experience at that point, the Streamline Companies is a vertically integrated organization. We have Streamline Capital Group, which is our real estate investment company. We have Streamline Development, which is our own general contracting company. We can do all of our own tenant improvements, capital improvements, out of the ground development. And then we have Streamline Asset Management, which is our own in-house property management company. So by having those three items under one umbrella, we're able to streamline everything, reduce costs, get better returns for our limited partners in our deals. And that's where we're at right now. I'm on a tour of podcasts, just telling the same story about how I want to help people learn and understand. There's so many intricacies of real estate investing that without 29 years of experience, it's hard to learn. And people love real estate. Everyone says, I'd love to own real estate, but they don't always know how, or the point of entry is too high. So we created funds and single asset syndications where people can get in at a low basis, learn about the process, and we host what's called Kick the Bricks Day. We bring our investors out to our properties and we allow them to feel, touch, see the asset that they actually own. And it gives them a sense of pride to see something that they have invested in.
Absolutely. That's a lot to unpack, David. I've got a lot of notes here. And 2008 was a rough year. I'm sorry about your partner. I've gone through a very similar thing. Losing a business partner, a co-founder of a business. I'm super fortunate. I'm not widowed. I've lost my wife, but I'm not widowed. I lost her in a different way. Losing a business partner is almost as close to that, I think. You get really close. It's a tough thing. So I'm sorry you had to go through that.
Thank you.
You said community lender. Can you tell us a little bit more about what is a community lender and why is that important?
Sure. Well, everyone knows of the big banks in the country, the U.S. Bank, the Bank of America, Chase Bank. Those are very large organizations. Community lender is potentially just one or two or three branches. And this community lender in specific, I was able to speak to the majority owner and the CEO of the bank at any time I wanted. And over the course of 7-8 years, if I wanted to invest in something, it would take a 30-minute face-to-face conversation with the CEO, and I would know yes or no if it's going to proceed through loan committee. And it's just such a great relationship because he knew who I was as a person. We knew each other's families. We both suffered tragedies during our lives that were very familiar. So we really connected. And without having that community lender relationship, a big bank would have just shut me down, taken the property, forced me to file bankruptcy, and changed my life considerably.
It's wildly different. You know, I say all the time, if you're starting a business that has any kind of capital strain on it, that you need capital to grow, have a really great relationship with as many local bankers as you can. You just never know. And then having that, you know, just like David and I just did, we just shared a story about losing one of our partners. Those stories carry weight with real people. They don't carry weight with a giant conglomerate. And so it's important to open up and share those stories in business because it gets you further than you would have gotten by just the corporate shaking the hands and stuff like that. I think it's really, really important.
The real estate investing business is all about relationships, from the lenders to the brokers to the partners. It's all about tight relationships.
Yeah. I know that you're in Class B real estate now, but you've got a lot of experience in real estate. And I spend a lot of time out on the streets with as many humans as I possibly can be with, right? And I try to talk to them. And I like to hang out with a lot of younger people in their early 20s. And the general consensus is I can never own a home. Like, it's out of reach for me. And at the same time, I'm sitting there saying, well, you need to buy assets as much as you possibly can. What do you tell that 25-year-old that's on the street today that's scratching their head about how do I grow my portfolio when I can't buy a home?
Find a mentor, find a partner, learn, and get started. When I bought my first investment property, before this, around the same time as the flip we did, it was because one of my clients told me as a 25-year-old, you need to invest. You're selling me properties. You need to buy some properties. I said, I'm a young family. I don't have the kind of money that you do. And he said, there's always a way. He actually gave me some advice on buying a townhouse, new construction in Southwest Florida in 2001 while the market was booming. And I still have the contract today. I had two $100 bills in my pocket, and that was my down payment and earnest money to sign that contract. And we still have a photocopy of that. And that's what started it. I built equity with a small down payment, great loans at the time, and made it into a rental property. and ultimately sold it before the market crashed and made some great money and moved on to the next property. So there's always a way to get started. I highly recommend every 20-year-old read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, so they just understand money. I gave all of my kids and their loved ones that book at Easter. So we passed out 8 or 9 of those books. And I said, read this. It's now time for you to start understanding money.
Absolutely. And I would say, Who Moved My Cheese, to make them understand desire as well. It's really, really important stuff. Rich Dad, Poor Dad is a phenomenal book. Absolutely love the concept of earning versus making. David, you built a track record across office, industrial, retail, medical, residential sectors. How do you decide which asset type to pursue in a given cycle?
It's a gut feeling, really, after doing it for so long. And it's what opportunities are coming my way. Right now, we're heavy into medical office and Class B office. The office market has taken a brutal beating over the last 4 years. And we're getting ahead of the game in investing back into office right now. Class B is a little different than what you hear about in the media. The media talks about huge vacancies, properties being sold for 20 cents on the dollar from their last sale. Those are really the Class A buildings in New York, Chicago, San Fran, LA. We're not buying those buildings. We're buying the smaller, suburban, local businesses where small businesses call their home for 8 to 10 hours a day. So our average building is probably around 30,000 square feet. We don't have one tenant that occupies more than 10% of that rent roll. So the architects, the wealth managers, the doctors we have, all those people still need offices, and they always will. And there's a lot of office to apartment conversion talk out there. Yes, that is happening. It is taking some of the supply off of the market. There's also some Class C and Class B buildings being knocked down for industrial development. Industrial development is huge here in Arizona right now. And by eliminating the supply, reducing the supply, the buildings that we're buying are just becoming more valuable. We buy in strategically placed locations around good infrastructure. And ultimately, by the improvements we do, we're increasing value, occupancy, and returns for our clients.
I'll tell you one of my speculations at the moment in Class B real estate, or what I think the world should be doing. I think somebody should be buying Class B real estate that has anywhere between 2 and 5 megawatts of power and converting them to edge data centers across the globe for AI distribution.
That is a huge up and coming market.
I'm fortunate enough to be a founder of a data center. So it is a very wild market at the moment. And Benzo is saying that we're going to be building in space. Pretty wild stuff. Many founders shy away from vertical integration. You run both the development, construction, and capital investment arms. What's the biggest tension in owning the entire value chain, and how do you manage it?
Well, you're managing people with different personalities. Well, you're dealing with people. I can be dealing with the blue collar contractor on site looking at a carpentry, plumbing, or electrical problem. And later that day, I could be sitting down with a professional athlete talking about investing with us. So being able to adapt to the different scenarios, situations, and personalities that I come across is probably the biggest challenge. But I love people. I mean, I love to sit around and talk and learn about people. And it comes natural to me, especially over 29 years of doing it.
Yeah, it's the personalities, Gary Vee talks about emotional intelligence a lot. And if you want to have a company that scales, you're going to have to deal with people, and you're going to have to deal with people of all different personality types, communication types. So being able to be a good communicator is a huge win for you. And I don't care how good you think you are, you can be better.
And it all comes down to respect. You respect people,
Yeah.
find the qualities in them, good and bad, and see how you can help them.
Yeah, I think the one that I 100% agree with you on respect is also, how do we get through this with respect and dignity for everybody, right? And then that's been a big game changer for me of how do we make sure everybody maintains dignity during this process that sometimes it's rough, man. And you gotta, to get your concept over the finish line, sometimes some of your personal boundaries have to kind of go to the sidelines for a minute, and not everybody's on that page, and only founders need to be in that boat. When underwriting a deal, What creative financing or structure tweaks have you used to de-risk projects for both the sponsor and the passive investor?
I love underwriting projects with seller financing. If we can get some seller financing in there, obviously it reduced closing costs. It reduced the time to get into a closing. Also, I've used seller financing as secondary financing, where some of our first couple deals in the apartment sector in the early 2000s, we went out and we got an 80% loan from the bank, and then we got 10% loan from the seller. So we only had to come in with 10% down at that point. And you take into account the prorations of security deposits, rents, taxes, that reduces that number even further. So I love seller financing, love secondary financing. Having an opportunity to utilize my finance degree that I earned and go through a different algorithm, different spreadsheet for different scenarios is enjoyable to me, as much as dealing with our investors and the contractors I deal with on a daily basis. So interesting financing is always a great play to make a deal better and enhance it. Obviously, with the financing I was talking about, the returns dramatically increase.
Absolutely. The secondary financing from the owner, I think, is brilliant, and it's a strategy that I use a lot. In mergers and acquisitions of companies, what I always try to do, or not always try to do, but I always try to make the seller a partner in the new company, and that's my down payment for the bank, or a portion of the down payment. I think it's a beautiful creative strategy to figure out how to get into the game with little or no capital out of pocket, right? You can use 100% of other people's money, and you're using just your sweat or logistics or execution, whatever you're bringing to the table, you're using, and everybody else's money was, it's a good place to be.
Absolutely.
It's safe. And if you can get somebody else to guarantee, that's even safer. You'd be surprised at how many people out there will sign their name on just about anything to be part of something. But in your experience, how important is local municipal relationships when doing redevelopment or entitlements? And how do you cultivate those before deals hit the table?
It's extremely important. It could make or break your deal sometimes. I've been fortunate enough over the years of being involved on the construction side to always make sure the inspectors, code enforcement officials knew who we were and knew our track record. That made it easier right off the bat. But meeting the economic development director of a municipality to understand what their goals are for the city. If it's not something they want to see in their city, they're not going to assist you to get it through. But ultimately, meeting the planners, I sat down with aldermen, council members to explain the projects that we were doing. And it's another relationship. And you build that relationship, it makes things go easier.
Absolutely. I've worked with general contractors on both sides of the fence, ones that had great relationships with the local municipality, and one of them that were kind of known as guys that pushed the envelope a little bit. And I can tell you that the inspections on the guys that push the envelope a little bit are far more tedious, a lot more rework that needs to be done and things like that. When you're dealing with permit work, it is no change of scope, do it to the book, follow the rules, and get that inspection done.
Early on in our investing and development career, my partner, who basically was in the trades, held the position of field supervisor on all of our projects. He said the inspectors will make or break us, so you might as well become friendly with them.
How do you do that? How do you get started doing with the inspectors?
Look for some common ground right off the bat. Hey, did you see that football game yesterday? Hey, how's your family doing?
Do I need to be going to City Hall and sitting in on meetings and participating in that, or just, is it just really being a nice guy or woman whenever you meet them?
Both. Going to City Hall, introducing yourself, that's a great way to break the ice and introduce yourself. But definitely when you meet them, find some commonality within your lives.
Yeah.
And build upon that.
Something that I do anytime I'm doing business in a new community is I start going to city council meetings and sitting in and just watching, introduce myself to the city council. Anytime I'm doing work in a new community, I think that is wildly important. You get to understand what's going on, understand your council people in your community, and ask them who else you should know in your community, because they know how to get things done.
Absolutely. And we have those relationships, and they've been tremendous to our success.
Yeah. You've managed 400 plus million in transactions. What systems or processes do you use to keep operational details tight and as portfolio size grows?
Well, my OCD kicks in anytime we get into a new deal. So I've developed a system of great filing and saving of documents so that it's easy to find anytime I need to go back to something. So many of us get tons of emails every day and it just gets cluttered. If it wasn't organized the way I can understand it, I'd be lost. So yeah, every deal folder is multiple subfolders underneath it in our hard drive. So organization and attention to detail is the key for me.
Absolutely. It is wildly important, and start that as early as you possibly can in business of get your naming scheme down. How am I going to name files? How am I going to store them? What's my filing system going to look like? It's a really hard hole to dig yourself out of once you get into it. Organizing data is a skill.
Yeah, and that's my personal attitude as well. As everything in my life I would like organized because it makes things easier and you're not wasting as much time. You don't get frustrated and it just makes life smoother.
You're absolutely great. And I agree with you. And I utilize that a lot in my own life, but I am still a fan of chaos. Don't know why. I wish I could breed that out of myself, but I can't train that out yet. Many real estate groups rely heavily on debt. You've leaned into capital structure creativity. What's your philosophy on leverage versus equity, especially in uncertain markets?
Well, I think to me, leverage is the most important component of the deal because you can quickly increase the value size that you're going to be able to buy. If you just had to pay cash for everything, you're not going to be able to buy as greater properties. So I love debt. I think real estate debt is good debt. There is such a thing as bad debt. So if you utilize good debt in the right way, it's strategically important to making your portfolio and your wealth grow.
How much equity do I need to have in a property to make it good debt?
We usually put 35% equity into all of our deals and look for 65% debt.
65% debt is a good debt number to carry on a property, in David's opinion.
Yes.
That's where you're running your business. Not
That's where
financial advice. This is where you're running your business at 65% debt on the real estate side.
Yes, that's what I'm doing. And that's what my lenders are comfortable with at lending it as well.
Okay. But you could typically walk in at 20%, right?
Yes.
And some commercial real estate, especially if it is multi-tenant dwellings, you can roll in on the rent roll that's currently existing there. If you do, there's a specific kind of loan that you can do. It's more of a business than a real estate play then. But
yeah, yes. Yeah, obviously the income of the property you're buying is extremely important to determining the value of the property.
Yes. What is your approach to investor communications and transparency, especially around downside scenarios or project delays?
So we have a system here in place that each of our syndications or funds has a minimum of a quarterly personalized letter from me along with financials. In the meantime, we also produce an in-house newsletter twice a month that those investors receive. The newsletter talks about generalities of the market, what Streamline is up to. But in that quarterly investor letter, I really take the time to let them know exactly what's going on at the property to the point where the first correspondence even includes information on how to understand the financials. I walk them through what the income is, how it's derived from multiple sources, what the expenses are, what's reimbursable, what's not reimbursable from the triple net lease perspective. So communication is super important. And one of the things I tell investors is if you're speaking to multiple sponsors, speak to them about what they do when things go wrong. And things do go wrong in this business. I've very rarely had anything pencil out to the penny over a 5-year projection. Now, if you're off a little bit, that's not the worst case scenario. But in the example when we were in that townhome development and things really went bad, if I had investors, I would have had to strategically explain to them what we were doing, why we were doing, and how we were caught in a whirlwind that wasn't something we brought upon. Didn't have investors on that one, but have had many investors on other deals where we communicate the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I'm available 24 hours a day to my investors. I call all of them family. I ask them to become part of the Streamline family, trust in me, and walk side by side and know that I've been through the war and I know how to get through it.
Wonderful. Transparency is so important. I recall I'm super easily excited, right? Like I get excited about stuff. When I was younger, I got really excited really easily, and I would jump into scenarios that were bad for me. And I remember I had an opportunity to invest in a bank. It was the first time that I could buy into a bank, and it was a pretty low investment. There was a group of 10 people, and it was 10,000, right, to get the 100,000 to buy in, and then we would own a percentage of this bank. And I was so excited. One of the guys that I was with asked the bank for the financials, and they drug their feet, and it ended up killing the deal for us. And the point here is that bank filed it did not make it. And anybody that drags their feet or has any kind of scenario where they're saying, well, give me a couple of weeks to get the financials together, or they don't have a process say, oh, the financials come out on this date, tells you instantly that they don't have their shit together, and you should be second guessing everything that you do with that company. They should have their financials together. And if you're going to be investing in that company, it's absolutely within your rights to ask for them or demand them now, or what is the schedule that they're released. It is so important. I've never seen anybody drag their feet on financials that didn't go under at some point in their life anyway.
For sure, they're hiding something. And when you get that response, red flag should be going up.
I'm super happy today that I didn't go through with that investment, but I was angry at the time for sure. But yeah, it is what it is. I learned the lesson, and I did not have to eat any of my own skins. I appreciate it.
That's the best outcome you can ask for.
How do you identify and recruit the right development or construction talent that can execute your vision, especially in markets outside of your home base?
Well, when I moved to Arizona, I basically had to develop a whole new team. Because I had been in the Chicago market for the majority of my career, I had built the team. Obviously, we replaced people here and there, but coming out to Arizona, I had to build a whole new network. So it was interviews and coffees and lunch. It's like, get to know the person. What have they done? Who are they as a person? Just like I asked people to ask the sponsors like myself who they are and what they've done throughout their career. I ask the same questions of my architects, engineers, zoning attorneys, real estate closing attorneys, and then ultimately into the construction side. I'd like to know who these people are. What type of subcontractor are they? And I'm a big proponent of small businesses. I love when I can meet with the owner of a company. They're going to come out on site. They may or may not be there turning the wrench with their crew, but they care enough to show up every time. And that's important to me. So building the network, talking to people, and just weeding out the good and the bad.
Yeah, it's spend as much time with your general contractors as possible. Get to know them. This is your business. It's your baby. It's everything. And just blowing off a vendor as, oh, any vendor will do is not the best way to move forward in life.
Not at all.
Especially when you're building fairly large, complex systems. David, what's one deal that you thought that taught you a lesson you still carry forward? Maybe a deal you almost walked away from or got big surprised by?
Well, it was definitely that townhome development because it was such adversity. No deal taught me more than that. It taught me how the global economics can affect a small project in the suburbs of Chicago with the Great Recession. It taught me grit because my partner passed away. I had to figure out how to do his job immediately. And fortunately, we had some great subcontractors that were part of our team for so many years. They took me under the wing and really helped me learn the construction process fast so that still today I can walk into any project, read any blueprints and understand things. I have a finance major. That was my path, was just buying, selling, acquisitions, financing. Never thought I'd be boots on the ground in the construction trades as well, but it worked out. I understood it. It seemed easy to me and we moved forward with it.
Yeah, partnerships are strange. I've done a lot of business in my life and I prefer business with partners, but when I don't have a partner, I tend to move a little quicker and get things done faster and learn things about myself so much quicker as well. Looking ahead 5 years, what sectors, geographies, or deal types do you see as asymmetric opportunities? And how is Streamline positioning to act on them?
Well, it's definitely the office market, which is why we're early to the game right now. And you're going to see over the course of the next year, a lot more companies getting involved in office investing. Office took a brutal beating since the pandemic. To me, that just creates opportunities. Some of our product had been demolished or converted. We look to increase the supply of good quality Class B office buildings because ultimately cash flow is super important to small businesses. A client could spend $40 a square foot for a Class A office building here in Phoenix, or they can spend $20 to $25 on a Class B. Guess where that $15 goes? Straight back to the bottom line. And if you're not a large corporation and you don't need the glitz and glamour, the Class B is where you want to be. Also, the medical office buildings we're very bullish on because our aging population isn't going to stop. I sit on the board of directors for a nonprofit for an Alzheimer's and dementia group here in Arizona, and we're in the middle of a silver tsunami with people being diagnosed with these cognitive disabilities on a rapid basis. So the medical profession is going to be key to helping our population over the foreseeable future. And out here in Phoenix, we have the Mayo Clinic. We have Creighton Medical University. We have the University of Arizona Medical University. We have a lot of universities coming to Arizona to recruit and build out here. So it's super exciting to be in those two classes right now.
Absolutely. Is your bet that as the Class A's disperse, that they'll end up in the Class B buildings? Is that what you're...
A lot of them already have. Yeah. And the Class A is going to come back over time for sure. We're not knocking down high rises to make way for a Walmart. They'll just look for some type of adaptive reuse over time.
Or there'll be data centers.
Could be.
That's what I'm feeling at the moment. Anyway, David, if somebody wanted to work with you, who is that person? Where are they at in their journey? And how would they reach out to you and get started?
So you have to have a little bit of an entrepreneurial mindset to understand or even desire to learn about real estate investing. So entrepreneurs, business professionals, business owners, I work a lot with doctors, attorneys, and a lot with professional athletes. We've really helped that market because those guys get taken advantage so many times by bad financial advice. So we're out there in the education process trying to help them understand what they can do to protect themselves. So anybody that wants to learn, anybody that wants to get started in real estate, we're your number one stop. But ultimately, we are here to help streamline your capital into long-term wealth. That's what we're about building.
Awesome. And how would they get started with you?
So our website, thestreamlinecompanies.com, is a great place to go visit. You can see all three entities. My email address is djh@thestreamlinecompanies.com. And I'm also huge on LinkedIn, David J. Hrizak, and there's an H in that name, Hrizak.
I don't know if you noticed, but I didn't even try to say it.
A lot of people are afraid to.
I just avoided it completely. David, thank you so much for joining us today. As we wrap up the show, Diary of a CEO is my favorite podcast. And Stephen has been so kind to offer us these deck of cards of all the questions that he's had written for his show. This one's from Gary V. What scares you the most today?
Well, what scares me or what concerns me as well is the amount of people not diversifying right now. Stock market's at an all-time high. Potential correction when you get to that level. I advise people, hey, pull some money off the table and diversify your portfolio. Get the tax advantages of real estate. So it worries me that so many people are just riding this curve of the stock market. And if they don't invest wisely, they can get burned if there is a correction anytime in this foreseeable future. So it scares me that people may not be educating and diversifying and just putting things on autopilot sometimes.
The autopilot thing is scary. And I think that leads to my biggest fear today. I think in society, I see the what I would call the gutters, the extremes on either side growing. It feels like the gutters of our world are thickening, and that's the extremist on either side of the fence. And I'm a man of compromise and moving forward in this world. It just seems like we're digging our heels in deeper and deeper every single day. And I wish we could figure out how to move past that in our society. I think we'll find a way.
Yeah. Simply put, there's a lot of bullshit in this world that doesn't need to be happening right now.
Yeah, it just doesn't. And if you're out there watching the show and you have a fear, what you're fearing today, please leave it in the comments. We'll do our best to answer them and give you our perspective and why we think it'll be okay or why we think you should legitimately be scared about those things. David, thank you so much for your time today. We appreciate you.
Thank you, Ken. Thank you for your time.